than there is to be gained. Nevertheless, on a crowded circuit there are bound to be upsets. Luckily, there's usually lots of grass handy, and all that's lost is rather more time than you could possibly have hoped to make up. So winning this race is one thing, but it's time that counts, not the checkered flag. And when the times for this race were added to the mix, Damien Kohler, number 121, was just a couple of seconds behind the GT40 of Chris Childs, who'd taken the racetrack steadily, well aware of the perils that lie in wait for the overexcitable. But he was a whole 30 seconds adrift of the man he was really chasing, the runaway leader of the post-65s, Danny Sullivan. There were 6 more kilometres scheduled for the day, this time on a closed road special stage, which had actually been shortened to just over 5Ks. Chris Childs took another lump of time off his Ferrari rival in the number 23 car on this short stage, consolidating his position at the top of the overall leaderboard. Good work when other drivers in similar cars were still finding the roads a little narrower than they would have liked. But this view must be a daunting sight to Americans accustomed to the broad sweep of the blacktop highways that carve a much wider, straighter line across their native landscape. The Milos were well inside the overall top 10 when the day began, but Girard had not been kind and they were never going to get back the missing 2 minutes on a short stage like this, and Jean Ragnotti must have cursed his own enthusiasm here. A rookie mistake, but well recovered, but still a disappointment after things had gone so well for him on the circuit earlier on today. Tailenders in competition, like the Fiat, were more than a minute behind the front runners, and that gave the regularity drivers a good spread of time to aim at. They, you remember, are offered an upper and lower limit and choose themselves a target time somewhere between the two. That choice of times is arrived at from the times set by cars in the competitive section, and there was therefore plenty of choice. And it's not just a question of picking the slowest time and going for that. Driving behaviour in the stage is monitored, and there are penalties for sandbagging, which had not been happening up at the front of this field, where the GT40 drivers in particular all emerged from the stage wearing huge big smiles.
Dry conditions, rough finish to the tarmac, so plenty of grip for our tyres, and an absolute dream of a stage really. It's a pity it was shortened from 6 kilometres to 5 kilometres, because we'd have liked 40 kilometres of that.
Behind the wheel of the LM, prettiest of the 250 series by far, Peter Hardman had grabbed 4 seconds from the leader at Girard, but lost it again on this short road section.
I really enjoyed the stage this afternoon, actually. I don't know if we were very quick on it, but I enjoyed it. It was dry, it was quite tight, a little bumpy, I suppose, but, you know, the car went well. So hopefully it was good, I don't know yet.
Evening of a 450-kilometre day, which brought the total road distance into 4 figures and the competitive stage distance to just on 100 kilometres. The special stage had all gone a bit pear-shaped for Sullivan, and the Porsche lost 16 seconds to the number 40 Ferrari, which was second. But luckily, they had lost a minute at Girard, so Sullivan stayed top, and his margin was now up above 1 minute. Day 4 of the Tour Auto is a tough one. 3 stages, and the first one is just up the road from the overnight halt. Straight up, 1,600 metres into ski country, where snow still adorns the French Alps, and the same applies to the next stage at Chamrousses as well. No, let caution be your watchword now, especially those of you in cars like this, with more horsepower than is good for you on a dry road. Huge fat tyres that slip on dry tarmac, and an all-up weight to make Naomi and Kate green with envy. It's a recipe for disaster if you don't take extra care, and this is the longest stage of the day, more than 10 kilometres, meaning that the more nimble cars might well be able to grab back a useful handful of time if the crews can judge just how hard to push and not push any harder. Danny Sullivan was still in go-for-it mode, and once again the Porsche was in the environment it was built for. Dramatically quick point-to-point driving with little or no fuss, even on slippery roads. This was a well-moderated performance from Sullivan, and well-judged too. Top of the pile by just a second over the 10 kilometres. He'd done just enough to stay on top of the post-65 leaderboard. Running just outside the top 10, the crew of the Daytona knew this was no time for heroics. And though we're concentrating on the battles at the front of the field, this is a good time to remember that this is a field of 200 with the same dramas for position being played out right across the leaderboard. Everything to play for, whether you are 9th or 29th, and for many drivers there was plenty to gain from the well-judged push. But in general, most of them were taking these first two stages at a steady pace, concentrating on getting through them unscathed. Except perhaps Peter Hardman, who started the day looking at a 20-second gap between the Ferrari and the Ford and knew that he had to be on the pace now or settle for second. As for everyone else, there was a fine balance between on the pace and off the road. Even for those in the regularity section, keeping to target times was sometimes tricky. No problems if you happen to be a Stratos driver taking things easy, but sometimes a little exciting if you were wringing an Alpine by its neck, even if it was just for the fun of it. But now the route swung away from the Alps and Monte Carlo rally country, dropping towards Nîmes and well below the snow line, heading for the third and final test of the day, just 6 kilometres long. The crews with the bigger and more powerful cars could let them loose again, and once again started to record the faster times on the stage. Paul Natfield in the number 9 Daytona continued to edge closer to the top 10 on that post-65 leaderboard, though he was minutes behind the actual leader. And yes, you're right, Danny Sullivan continued to nail the 911 in a display of road driving prowess that would doubtless have won him a drive with a serious rally team if he'd ever tried it. Not everyone had come here to win though, and for many of the crews it was now a question of holding on for the finish in Cannes 2 days ahead. And to be fair, finishing an event like this is still an achievement for a classic car, and it was the main ambition of a large percentage of those crews who set out from Paris 3 days ago. And as ever, the pre-champagne spanner checks were more important to some than to others. But even where the margin on the leaderboard is half a minute, there's no point taking chances.
Probably 30 seconds behind now. It's quite a lot, so we need some good luck, I think. I mean, we couldn't make it up by just driving, because I think we're just too evenly matched anyway. So we just need a little bit of luck to come our way.
With just 2 tests remaining on the final day, 1 race and 1 stage, 30 kilometres in all, Peter Hardman would be needing a pretty fair chunk of luck. Like, for example, 8 laps of the rather wet circuit at Leventis, 25 slippery kilometres, which put the GT40 at a distinct disadvantage to the agile Ferrari. Hardman got a good start. No, make this a great start, and he nipped into the lead going into the first left-hander. But even he was having to take things easy, and it was pretty clear from the onboard that he was walking a tightrope. He needed time, huge big wadges of the stuff, and he was quicker than Chris Childs, but was he quick enough? And could he afford to go any faster when the penalties were so immediate and so severe? John Ragnotti had no such qualms. He was hunting Sullivan's scalp and had to beat the Porsche here on the circuit. More than 2 minutes behind on the leaderboard, he knew victory was not really an option, but beating Sullivan on the circuit was now a matter of pride for the cheerful rally hero. Hardman obligingly let the Porsche through as well, not wishing to lose time, scrapping for track position he didn't need, and he concentrated staying on the black stuff and letting everyone else have all the dramas, which Chris Childs also nearly managed. But while he managed a neat recovery, Danny Sullivan had got other problems, serious ones, and all of a sudden Ragnotti's glorious charge had gained some very real meaning, because he was more than a minute in front of the Ferrari, which had held second spot on the overnight leaderboard, and that made him class leader by more than 30 seconds with just one stage to go. Just 5 kilometres. And Chris Childs was just 15 seconds ahead of Peter Hardman in the Ferrari. No one had more to lose than Childs or more to gain than Hardman. But few people made any mistakes, though there were still some positions to be gained or lost. Some of the margins between cars were just a couple of seconds. Just about doable in 5 kilometres for anyone who wanted to take the risk. Peter Hardman tried as hard as he dared, but on the dry stage there was nothing between the Ferrari and the GT40, and he could only nibble a couple more seconds from the big Ford. Nothing could upset the serene performance of the leading regularity crew either, who'd collected only a few penalty points on the way to Cannes, where the finish line, the champagne and the celebrations awaited the many winners who were on their way to the warm sunshine of the Croisette. Though we've been following the dramas of the 3 main classes, there were many other classes represented in a field of 200 cars, better than half of which survived to the finish. Even the luckless Sullivan managed to limp through the final stage and make it to the end of a journey that had started 5 days and 2,000 kilometres earlier in the shadow of the Eiffel Tower. And though they don't all get trophies, they're all winners in one way or another. It may have been fun, but it wasn't easy. Confirming what we've just seen, Chris Childs and David Mountford take a repeat win by a handful of seconds after 150 kilometres of competition, a similar margin to that enjoyed by Ragnotti in his last gasp effort that convincingly changed the face of this leaderboard and put a smile on all the others. Smiles too for Martin Sakari, who'd led the regularity section since that very first test, as indeed Chris Childs had topped the overall leaderboard all the way here.
To be fair, this year we came really not expecting to win. I mean, we were sort of obviously hoping, but having won last year, I thought, I mean, once in a lifetime was enough. And I thought a second year is just an absolute bonus, but it was a hell of a tight fight.
No problems for the regularity winners in 5 days, and they probably would have won the long distance award too if there was one, all the way from Argentina.
I'm really happy. The weather, as you said, is beautiful. The people have been very nice in the last stages. The stages were really hard, and so we are very happy that we're able to win.
Well, no matter how happy he might have been, few people could have been more pleased with their result than Jean Ragnotti, showing just what the little car is capable of, especially in poor conditions.
Très bon résultat. La semaine, il a fait beau. Pour l'Alpine, il y a eu un peu de pluie, ça a été très bien pour le spectacle. Et non, nous sommes très contents. Ouais.
So, after 5 days of driving through perfect scenery, on a journey punctuated by wonderful lunches, champagne sundowners and hugely indulgent dinners each evening, tonight, for a change, there will be, yes, a celebration dinner on a scale previously unimagined even on Tour Auto.